Okay, so right now I am on the main application page. Does anybody need me to step back and look at how you log into that? So you all have this link. It's oedit.secureforce.com/BFI. And so as you can see, I've already logged in. I used the username, and you're probably initially given a password. You had to go in and reset your password. At any time, you can reset the password if needed, if you forgot it. It should send an email immediately to your email account that's set up under the application, and you can change that. So since this is a non-public application, when you get to this first page, you don't really see information about the Easy Designation application. So what you're going to do is click the update button because an application already exists for you. And here you would have that application. You might also have any other applications that you have with the Office of Economic Development showing up here. So since the application is already set up, we are editing it. So we're going to click the edit icon. And then we get into the main screen. And this will have your organization name appear. And if you ever need to reference the application number, it's here. But you know, you can just contact me if you have questions, or if you can't find it, or you can't log in. Let me know. If I'm not here, Jeanette Albert on our staff is our Salesforce technical support, and she knows the ins and outs of all this. So one thing to notice, we have guidelines at the top. So it's good to read through those and just know kind of how things are expected to go. Our applications are due July 15th. There's information on the redesignation webpage. If you click on this, it will take you over to another webpage, and you can find the timeline, other information about the data, your mapping tool. I took down the data table here because I've gone to 2 versions of that data, and the newer versions had initial responses from applicants. I figured some of those didn't need to be shared publicly at this point, so that's why it's no longer here. But if you don't have that data table and you need it, let me know. So just know that the information you provide in this application is subject to open records. And then we always warn, use Google Chrome, Mozilla Firefox, or if you're on a Apple product, it's Safari. And then if you sit idle for 2 hours, you get logged out. So as you step through the application, just make sure to hit save. If you ever click save and exit, it actually kicks you out and you have to re-log in. So you'll see if you go through the screens, you just want to click save. And so just what we're going to do is step through. They're set up in tabs. The first tab is just applicant information. This always pops up anytime you click on a new tab. It's just a warning in case you've entered information and not clicked save. So there was some filler data in these first question sections. You will put in your information, your applicant organization, first name, last name, your email address, and phone number. You'll see these little status bars here, and that just lets you know that there's a field capacity, a field limit to a lot of these, and if you hit that, you can only hit 100%. So it's just letting you know how close you are to maximizing what you can put in that field. So as I move to the next screen, instead of just clicking next, I'm going to click save to be cautious. I mean, everything I already had there was already entered and saved, so I could have clicked next. And then it does pop you back to the guidelines tab in between each one. So the proposed enterprise zone is our next tab. So this is where we're asked to identify information on the data table. And on the data table, we add information about the distress conditions and the objectives for each area. So I have open over here a data table. And so hopefully everybody's familiar with the data table at this point. But it's an Excel spreadsheet. We've got filters already set up in it. So you can choose to, look at county level data. If I click on these, you'll see the various options: county subdivisions, places, block groups. I think for a lot of you, what makes most sense is you would click on the county that you're dealing with, and then you'll get the subset of everything related to that county. This provides the county identifying information. Here's the FIPS code, which is really the aggregate of how you identify a county. It's nesting part, so the census tract, the block group, the county subdivision. And then we provide the qualifying data and the population data. So we have 2013 population, which is what we're going to be making sure we Okay. Yeah, so if we get feedback, you might want to mute yourself and then unmute yourself when you have a question. Thanks. So we have the population, we have the unemployment rate, the population growth rate, which is one of the qualifying criteria, unemployment rate, and the per capita income. And then here you just have a yes or a no as to whether or not that meets the qualifying cutoff. There's a tab in the worksheet called criteria, and that's where you'll see what the cutoffs are. So you've got to have a population growth rate less than 1.45, unemployment rate greater than 10.63, or per capita income of 23,000 to meet the basic eligibility to include that area in the enterprise zone. And then what we're looking for here is that for every area you want to include, first of all, it would need to meet the qualifying status, and you're going to explain the economic distress for that area. So here we know this one had a low population growth rate, but beyond that, what are the other issues going on in this community? So perhaps our issue is that we lost a major employer, and population is moving. So whatever the actual conditions are for that area, try to be specific and relevant to how this describes the distress in that particular area. And then here, what is the objective? So let's say we have a particular facility that's now vacant. So we want to attract a business to fill the vacant building and to hire workers in the area. And then maybe we know that this facility is for a particular type of business, or we're trying to attract a certain industry. So I think it's good to give whatever level of detail you have. Essentially, you want to make a convincing story. This is a document that we'll keep, so if anybody's wanting to look into why we selected certain areas for enterprise zone status, they would come here and we would have a convincing bit of evidence as to why this area is really distressed and that we have plans for this area. So when you're done with your data table, you're going to be selecting and providing details for each of the areas that you want.
Right.
So for this one, we're looking at particular census tracts.
Before we get into that, would you mind just confirming by email what you told me on the Google Spreadsheet that I got the payment and so forth?
And so essentially we're going to need to have something entered in both columns T and U for every area that we want to include. So in this example, let's say we're only including these three.
Exactly. That was the whole.
I'm going to go ahead and get rid of these other ones in my preliminary application. I wanted to include those, but now I'm going to leave them out. So something I can do here, I mean, there's all kinds of ways to work with the data. So now I've just sorted, so I have the records on top that I'm including. And then I want to find out how much population I'm including in my enterprise zone. So by just covering over these cells, it gives me the total. So that total population is 13,210. So when I go back to my application over here, I can put that number in. And this is just going to make sure that we are within our limits of population. And so the example I gave was just for one county within what is currently a multi-county enterprise zone. So you're going to be doing the summation for all areas. And then in question 9, I'm asking how many areas have I selected on the data table. As you just saw, I've only selected 3. And the reason I'm asking for this information here is it just allows me to corroborate with what you have in your data table. Too many data tables.
So Sonia, for those of us, Sonia, it's Deanne. Can you hear me?
Yes.
For those of us using blocks, so you want us to count each individual block as a unique FIPS code?
Correct. So if you're using if you're using blocks, you'll put in the information in column T and U for the block and reference. Let's say I'll give an example. I picked a county without block level data, but let's say
it's okay.
So since blocks actually don't have a qualifying status, let's add in some description like census tract, block group 1 qualifies for unemployment. Sorry, I can't spell. And then go ahead and describe it. And this will give us a reference to say, yes, we met a qualifying criteria, because in our column S and all of these, we don't actually have any qualifying data. We're qualifying at the block group and not at the block level. So when I'm done with this, I'm going to save it. And so you're working on your own system at this point.
What we're doing is mainly
so some people have asked, if they get that data table and they upload it into the application and then start working with it, it's really not that accessible. So you just want to work with it in your own system. When you're done, you can save it and close it. And then when you're back in the application, you just browse into wherever you've saved it. I saved this on my desktop. And then you click upload. So when you click upload, it does save what's on the page. And it again boots you back to the first page of the application. But if we go back to that tab, we'll see that it's there. And it gives you the upload date and time. Question 7 is about the maps. So if you have mapping staff, if you have access to people that create maps, you can have them take your FIPS codes and map them. You can also show any overlays if you've got special designations for certain areas that that show that you're also supporting economic development with other programs. You can go ahead and have those put on your maps. If you don't have somebody to make maps for you, let me know, and I think all of you have access to Robert Whalen's email at this point. What we'll do is take what you've given us in the data table, we'll take those FIPS codes and create a map for you. And so when Robert does that, he can usually give you a static map, and then he's giving you a link so that you have it as an online map as well. Anybody have questions about the data table or the map? So we've put in our population count and our FIPS codes, and we can move on to the next section. So here we are identifying the primary economic challenges and community needs. And so this is our narrative, and it's the narrative sections that I think are going to be our best message to the executive director here at OADIT, who reviews the applications and makes the recommendation, and the commission, the Economic Development Commission, who is the one with authority to approve enterprise zones. So in these narratives, you want to be succinct, and you want to tell a good and convincing story. And, in a nice brief package so that the commissioners will read it and understand the conditions for your area. So I've borrowed some information that some of you have already provided and put in some text here. Now you can see this limit. So with the amount of information I put here, that pretty much took up the amount of content that I could add in this section. If you have a lot more that you want to say, I would put it in your economic development plan, and that's in the next tab where you upload that. But again, here you don't want to say too much because you want it to be read and digested by the commission and executive director. Question 11 is provide other relevant metrics of economic distress. You can also see this little red mark. This means it's required. So you're required to put information in question 10. You don't have to put information in question 11. But if you have other things that you track to look at your economic condition, if you've looked at poverty, if you've done other things to assess the economic issues in your community, you can talk about those here. Question 12. So we've talked about what the problems are, what are our opportunities? And that's what we want to get at in question 12. So you could point out what what are the assets of the community? Do you have great infrastructure? Do you have some buildings ready for new employers? Do you have good broadband that's going to allow your businesses to conduct business? What are the assets that you have that you can use to continue the economic development? So again, you can see the limits of what you can put in there. And then question 13, this is where we upload our economic development plan. So just the same way we uploaded the data table, we can upload our economic development plan. Some people have asked about what to use here. We said you can take information from other economic development plans you've created. If you're a place where your whole jurisdiction is going to be designated an enterprise zone, you can use your whole area's economic development plan. If you've got just specific areas that are going to be enterprise zone, then try to target your plans those areas that are going to be within the enterprise zone. Another resource that I gave you is the annual report that we use for the enterprise zone program. So if you want to boil down things into that format, which is pretty simple and short, it just, I think, document used.
Sonia, I have a question about those limits for those questions. Is it character-based? Is there a number of characters that we should pare down to?
It is a number of characters, and I think it's about 2,000 characters.
Okay.
So I think it means spaces, commas, periods, all count. So
Okay.
this is one of our templates for annual reporting of the enterprise zone. And basically what it is an overview of the area, so an economic overview. You know, some folks put in charts of metrics that they track. And then in our annual reports, we do observations and data that we track. This one has a lot of tables, certainly a lot of them don't. And then your objectives. So with just as we did in the narrative in this economic development plan, you want to point out what the issues are and what your objectives are. And then to the extent that you have things you can track, it's great to show those. So somebody asks also, what if I've uploaded something and I want to get rid of it? You'll notice there's a little trash can. Let's see if that works for us. It does. Okay. So if you've uploaded something, you cannot delete it yourself. You can let me know, and then I'll work with Jeanette and see why you can't delete it.
What was your question?
And then question 14, how will the proposed zone support an economic or a central business district? So this varies, of course, from place to place as to what your central business districts are. This is a part of the enterprise zone statute that it calls for the enterprise zone to support a central business district. I think the idea here is we're targeting areas rather than just covering you know, all areas of the state within the enterprise zone. In the rural areas, sometimes we do cover the whole county, but we can still speak to how supporting our farmers and our rural businesses lends itself to supporting a community center as well. Any other questions or comments on the section 3?
Once the limit is determined, which is separate, what the cost of the new piece
And then, so I added question 15. We've talked about it on our enterprise zone administrator calls, and I think I've alerted new applicants to this as well. We do want to have a couple of images, and we think it'll just make a better package for the commissioners, give them some ideas of what these areas look like. So we put some guidelines, you know, 2 images at least for each area. If you're a single county, 2 images might cover it for you. If you're a multi-county enterprise zone, maybe 4. But whatever you think gives a good idea of the area. And then ideally we'll just have about 1 page per applicant for the 16 zones with images. So some of the multi-county enterprise zones, be pretty selective in what you upload because we'll be combining some of our, we have some subzones and some of the existing separate zones will be combined into one statutory zone. Some pictures. And whenever you get an upload, I'm just going to try to upload some random things here. But and I don't necessarily have image files, but you can upload several things. So in the other sections where we have uploads like letters of support, you can continue to click on.
Sure. Okay.
So that's just to show you that you can do several uploads.
Sure.
All right, so we'll move on to the next section unless there are questions here. So section 5, current enterprise zone outcomes. If you're an applicant that has not been in enterprise zone, you don't have to complete section 5. So for areas that have had enterprise zone, question 16, describe major outcomes that have been derived from the program. So on our enterprise zone administrator call last week, we talked a little bit about this question. Certainly folks don't feel comfortable saying that everything that's happened or any big project is solely due to the enterprise zone program. We're not asking you to say that, but how has the enterprise zone program helped? What has it done in your area? Has it been an incentive that encouraged an employer to expand and add new employees? Did it support a contribution project that brought certain infrastructure to your region that didn't exist before? So some evidence of what the program has done, and of course this is going to be looked at as to how is the program valuable. Question 17 asks for a table or a graph. So for enterprise zones, we do an annual report, and in that annual report, you have objectives. And so usually there's at least one or two things that you're tracking over time. Sometimes that is the number of certifications. Sometimes it's how much outreach are we doing. Some of you are tracking just the change in unemployment in your regions. So whatever it is that you have used as a measure of economic activity and how the enterprise zone plays into that, we're asking you to give us a picture of what's going on with those metrics over the last 5 to 10 years. So pick a period that makes sense. I mean, we don't want it to be too tough to go back and find all that data, but to give a flavor of how things are going in your enterprise zone based on those measures that you chose to track.
Well,
any questions on these two?
Sonia, this is Joe, and I also emailed you. Does it have to be in the form of a table or graph? I mean, in little boxes? Our objectives, I went back to the last 5 years of annual reports, they're pretty wordy, just like we are. And, our accomplishments are also more wordy. I mean, if we have to put it in some type of table and type all that in or paste it in, we can, but we can't just do it in a narrative form, list our objectives for 2011, 12, 13, 14, and 15, and then underneath each one talk about the accomplishments?
Well, I'm kind of think of what the commission might be able to digest here. And I think you can certainly talk more in a narrative in question 16. You know, if those objectives, if you've had some good accomplishments against those would be some outcomes. But in question 17, and Joe, I think I just went back and looked at your last annual report, and you did have some things like, I think one of your primary ones is diversifying your tax base. And so I don't know if you track that, that figure over the years. And then I think you also had something about the vacant building rehab credit, or maybe it was the investment tax credit and increasing utilization of that. So then you could just have, here's my investment tax credit certifications, you know, 5 years, and this is what's happened. And again, I mean, if you have several measures, upload a few images, and it can be an Excel file, a couple different Excel sheets, and then we'll take those images and put it on a page so that the commission can easily get a picture. So in question 17, they're getting more of a picture. In question 16, it's more of a description.
So can we group the years together? Because if you go back and read our annual reports, particularly during the last 5 years, because originally it was established, you know, by Kevin, and that we use a certain format and gave us certain suggestions. They're almost identical each year. The measurements might be slightly different. And no, as far as trying to document the diversification and the difference in non-residential versus, you know, assessed value of commercial versus assessed value of farming or assessed value of whatever, no, we have not tracked that, nor would it be relevant. If it needs to be in a table, I'll make it in a table. I'm just curious, but can we combine the past 5 years, or do you want us to list it by year? We've been in enterprise zone since 1986, and you know, the last 5 years are relevant, but they're very similar.
Right, but so let's say you're looking at the investment tax credit certified. I think showing that year by year is going to give a flavor of what's going on more recently with the enterprise zone program in your area.
So even though they might be repetitive within the table or chart or spreadsheet, you're okay with that?
Yeah, and I mean, maybe I don't have a good idea of what you're thinking. We can talk more offline. Has anyone else on the call pulled some data together and can give an example?
Okay. Yeah, let me put something together within the, you know, by Monday, and then it'll be easier for us to discuss whether it works or not, or where I need to modify it. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks a lot.
Here I pulled up for the annual report that we do for the enterprise zone program overall. You know, we always report the certification statistics or values. So kind of what I'm picturing is, let's say for East Central, you might have a number of certifications. We'll just pull that one off. And so you could have, this is for 2014, you might show 2014, 13, 12, 11, and just show what those figures are. Kind of some picture of what's going on in your zone, or whatever you've got in your, as your particular objective. You know, maybe you were trying to do something more with the investment tax credit. Maybe somebody was focused more on vacant building rehab, you know, the last 5 years.
That's a good suggestion. I mean, we can list numbers. In a way, I'm not hesitant to list numbers of certifications, because that is actually an exact objective. I am a little hesitant in listing the total amount of tax credits claimed because of the 2 gargantuous wind farms, and it just looks like I probably mistyped it when I didn't.
Right. Yeah. You've got.
So let me do that.
Yeah, you've got some anomalies with that.
That would work really well, but that just seems a little dull to me. I'll add something else, but thank you. That's a good suggestion.
Sonia, this is Maria. I was having difficulty with this one as well. Would it be possible the spreadsheet that you just had up? Do you have that for the counties, the enterprise zones for the, say, the past 4 or 5 years that you would be able to send us, that we could pull that information. I believe my annual reports, much like Joe's, is more wordy, and so seeing it, I don't know what measurements they used in the past. As you know, I am still fairly new, so seeing the numbers here would make would streamline that specific question for me.
Okay, I will look to our data sets and pull that together.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so we'll move on.
Sonia, that would be helpful for us too, since our objectives and our metrics have varied throughout the past several years. So if we can use that state data, that'd be awesome.
Okay.
Okay, Sonia, this is Joe, and I really empathize with the new people. That's got to be, certainly doable somewhere, but they're going to have to go back in the files and look. Those of us that are been around forever, we kind of have it in our head and know where to find it. Would you then send that separated for each of the zones if we requested, or would you send it in a total state database? Is it available where you can separate it out and send us that, and then we can use that as our base?
Yeah, so we'll talk about this. So what I'm thinking then is we'll have by zone each of the tax credits certified. If it's okay with you, I'm not going to deal with the contribution credits because that's a whole different database. So we'll just deal with the business tax credits, and it'll have this information I'll do it by fiscal year. And it's, so when I pull reports, I always do by the year.
I didn't understand that. We got that. We keep track of comparisons. I guess I was thinking you were going to talk more, you had done some type of database to present to the commission on the more wordy objectives, or the wordy goals.
Oh, I don't. I mean, we certainly have a record of the narrative reports that have been sent in, and I can get those back to everyone. But they are so different by each zone, and I don't have it in any kind of database format. It sits in a Word document or a PDF, depending on what people send in.
No, that's fine. We have that too. I've gone back and found all our Word documents and our annual reports and things, so not a problem. We'll make it work.
Okay, so the next section is zone administration. And we've had questions on these, just clarification. So in question 18, it's just a short answer. You don't have to be too descriptive. But what organization will be the designated zone administrator? So I think most of you know who that is. If you have questions, certainly ask me, but we're just looking for the name. Because in some cases, we do have applicants who are applying for their own community, but they are going to be under a different zone administrator. Question 19, identify the person at the organization. How does the person in the entity represent the area? What is their background in economic development? So here I put my test name and what my role is. So I explained, just made up something, but that if I were, say, the representative of the county, that I had 2 towns that are under my county, and we all collaborate on economic development. So this is just sort of being clear about the area that you represent. So later on, if you don't represent partner organizations or areas for which you are handling zone administration, you could explain that. I think there are a few cases, like Maria, you might be an example where AGNC, I think, doesn't really have Jackson and Grand under their umbrella, but you're representing them for the enterprise zone anyway. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, but so there might be cases where you're actually taking on zone administration for an area that really isn't under your organization's jurisdiction, but this is an opportunity to say you're representing them and that you have agreements with them to do so. And this will help us in the future if people come to us later and they question, why am I in this enterprise zone? How did this come about? We'll have some documentation on that. Question 20, this is just, again, who is the organization? Who is the individual? It'll add to our, just backing up the program that we all know the organizations we're dealing with, the people that we're dealing with, and that they are representative of the area. So again, you can do many uploads. And then question 21 is a narrative. So again, think of your narrative needing to speak to the commission in a brief way. Who are the other agencies you work with, your chambers, but really just people who will be presenting and representing the enterprise zone program along with you. I clicked on community support. Sometimes we get kicked to other areas. Upload letters of support. So here I just want to be clear that you want to, you don't have to have 100 letters of support, but you want to make sure that you've included support letters of important partners. So people that need to know there's an enterprise zone, like your government organizations, to the extent that you've got community colleges who are partners in economic development, I would include them. If they're not, certainly don't worry about it. But this again is where down the line we show that these organizations knew about it, they're supportive of it. And in these letters, you want them to say something convincing, like why the enterprise zone is important and why they support it. Not just, we've been under an enterprise zone and we support, organization XYZ continuing to manage that zone. You want it to be a convincing letter that talks about why the program is important and why this particular organization cares about it. So any other thoughts on support letters? So when we're done, the last tab is review and status. So this is just saying be sure you answer all your questions. This gives you a little checklist of what you have completed. This tells me I haven't uploaded my map yet. And then ultimately, it was not going to let you submit until you've answered everything that's required. And I really don't want you to submit your application until we've gone over it and you're comfortable with it and I'm comfortable with it. Once you click submit, you can't go back in to edit it. So it's better just not to do that. And again, there might be pieces that you can't complete on your own if you're relying on us at OEDIT for your map. Then we've got to get that to you before you can upload it. So once you've done your data table and you're set on which areas you're including, let me know, and Robert, you can copy both of us on an email or send it to both of us and we'll get you the map. So make sure you've uploaded your economic development plan, any of the other pieces of upload and the questions. And then when you're done for the day, save and exit. And then when you log back in later, all that information will be there. So are there any questions, any troubles you've had with the application? All right, well then, again, this is recorded, so I'll stop the recording, and I'll send it to everybody that's an applicant by email so you can review it. You know, if people have had problems just learning how to get in, to edit, to navigate the application, then it'll be documented here. So any final comments? All right, well,
Thank you.
All right, thanks.